والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين منتجبين المنتخبين المظلومين الغرر الميامين سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين سيدنا وإمام زماننا وصاحب نعمتنا وولي الأمرنا مهدي هذه الأمة وتوس أهل الجنة الحجة ابن الحسن العسكري فداه وأرواح العالمين صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Inshallah, in today's lecture I would like to talk about the personality of the Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. And to talk about certain factors and aspects of his life that are not so widely discussed or not read upon, or there are many Shias today that know of the Imam, but when asked about the Imam's life or asked about the knowledge that he spread or asked about the sacrifices that he made, it's a bit difficult for people to be able to tell us. So inshallah today I'd like to talk about this Imam. Now this Imam was born on the 57th year after Hijrah. So when we look at the Islamic calendar and we call it AH, what we mean is it's after the migration that the Prophet took from the city of Makkah towards the city of Medina. So when the Prophet left Makkah and entered into Medina, he began a new calendar system. This was known as the AH, after Hijrah. And after that migration, the Islamic calendar began again from day one. So anything prior to that would be seen before Hijrah and anything after would be AH. In AH, 67 or 57 years after the Prophet had migrated, Imam al-Baqir came to this world on the 1st of Rajab. Now, the Imam, just to speak about his personality, mention a little bit about his early days, also to mention his guardianship under Imam al-Hussein and his father Ali ibn al-Hussein, and to briefly touch upon him in Karbala as well, because Imam al-Baqir, some narrations state, was 3 or 4 years old at the time of Karbala. Then him coming back from Karbala, and inshallah we'll delve into what he did when he came to Medina after the passing of his father, the beginning of his imamat, and how he spread the knowledge and why he was given the title of al-Baqir, which is somebody that splits knowledge. Now with this Imam, again, he was born on, as I mentioned, on the 1st of Rajab, 57th year after Hijrah. Karbala took place on the 60th or the 61st year after Hijrah. So you can understand that this Imam was still a very young child at the ages of 3 or 4. You'll notice that when we speak about him, there's a few things that we always like to begin with. The first thing is his mother was the daughter of Imam Hassan. His father was the son of Imam Hussein. So he is the only Imam that is linked in such a way that his grandfather from both paternal and maternal sides are Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhimus salam. So that so the daughter was called Fatima, who was the daughter of Imam al-Hassan, who married Imam Zainul Abidin. And she blessed the Imam with 2 children, one by the name of Muhammad al-Baqir, and there was another one by the name of Abdullah, who was the older brother of Imam al-Baqir. Then also the Imam married a woman from the province of Sindh, which we know as the Indo-Pak continent and region. The Imam married this woman from Sindh, and she gave him one son as well by the name of Zayd. Now inshallah, in this lecture I will talk a little bit about Zayd, the son of Imam Zainul Abidin, and how due to him, or in respect of him, there's a sect or a denomination that has come from Shia mainstream Islam who only believe in 4 Imams. They believe in Imam Ali, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, and then after that they reject the imamat of Imam Sajjad and believe that Zayd, son of Imam Sajjad, is the 4th Imam, and that's it, there's no more Imams after him. So we'll inshallah mention that as well. So the Imam was born, he was raised firstly by Imam al-Hussein, his grandfather. The Imam raised him, used to sit him on his lap often, kiss him often, as Rasulullah would do with Imam Hussein. So he was imitating his grandfather. You'll notice that whenever Imam al-Hussein would be in Medina preaching to the Muslims or sitting on the mimbar of Rasulullah and educating or giving lectures, sermons or speeches, he would always have Imam al-Baqir in his lap, and he would say that this grandson of mine, his name is Muhammad, and his title is Al-Baqir. Al-Baqir comes derivative of the word of a person that splits knowledge into two. Now inshallah we'll talk about how he split knowledge or why he was given this name. So he began in the guardianship of Aba Abdullah. He was also accompanying Imam Hussein towards Karbala. He was also there on the day of Ashura. The books of the Maqtal don't speak about Imam al-Baqir in an open fashion until the caravan reached Sham. The reason why they don't speak about him is because the enemy, Umar ibn Sa'ad and Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad and Yazid al-La'in, these people didn't know that Imam Sajjad had a son. And they wanted to keep him secret because the purpose of the enemy was to finish the lineage of the Prophet. And on many occasions you'll notice even on the Sham-e Ghariba night, on the arrival in Kufa and on the arrival in Sham, that the enemies tried to kill Imam Sajjad as well. For when he was brought into Kufa and into Sham, they were asked, who is this person? So he would reply back by saying, I am Ali son of Hussein. They would say, but we already killed Ali son of Hussein in Karbala. He would say, no, that was my brother Aliyun al-Akbar. Then I have a younger brother Aliyun al-Asghar. My kunniya and my nickname is Aliyun al-Awsat. I am the middle Ali of the three Alis of Hussein. So you've killed my brothers, but you have not killed me. And they tried to kill him at that moment in Kufa and in Sham. But Sayyidah Zainab would come and stand in front of him and she would say, if you want to kill this person, my nephew, first kill me. And in an open court where all the companions of the Prophet are present and all the Muslims, or so-called Muslims as we say, were present, it was difficult for Yazid to openly kill a woman, especially a woman who was the daughter of Amirul Mu'mineen. So she would protect Imam Sajjad and preserve his life in Kufa and in Sham. The first mention of Imam al-Baqir came when they arrived into Sham. When they came into Sham and the Ahlul Bayt was standing in front of Yazid, and Yazid was ascended onto the pulpit, and all the companions were sitting around in a circle, Yazid would say to the people and all the Muslims that had attended that when it comes to these Ahlul Bayt members, all the children that are present, I'm going to sell them into slavery. All the women that are present, I'm going to sell them into slavery. And all the adults or young men that are present, I'm going to kill them. At that moment there was a voice that came from within the group of the Ahlul Bayt. And the voice said, O Yazid, you are worse than Fir'aun. So Yazid would look at the group of Ahlul Bayt in front of him and he would say, who is this person that just talked to me? Who made this statement? So Imam Sajjad would say to his son, O Baqir, step forward. So the Imam would come forward at the age of 3.5 to 4 years old and he would say, repeat what you said. He said, I said that you are worse than Fir'aun, Pharaoh or Ramesses of his time, who declared himself to be God. You're worse than him. So Yazid would ask, why would you make such a statement? He says, because when Fir'aun had Nabi Musa and Nabi Harun, Moses and Aaron, when he had them in his custody, he didn't just make a decision to kill them. He turned towards the people and asked them, what do you think I should do with Musa and Harun, with Moses and Aaron? And the people said, well, the best thing is to leave them, tell them to leave from this city, and maybe they can go live in a faraway, desolate land. So the Imam says, you're worse than Fir'aun, because Fir'aun consulted his advisors when it came to punishing the prophets of Allah, yet you have automatically made a decision. So when he asks, who is this? That's when the first mention publicly of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir was mentioned by saying that this is the 3 to 4 year old son of Imam al-Sajjad. He accompanied the Ahlul Bayt into Kufa. He accompanied the Ahlul Bayt into Sham. He also accompanied them in prison. He accompanied them all the way back to the city of Medina. Now, notice that a child, when he's very young, he looks for warmth, he looks for comfort, he looks to be nurtured. Yet Imam al-Baqir, from the very onset, the time that he was born, was the time of the reign of Muawiyah. And it was a reign that was so bad that if anybody publicly or openly showed love towards any of the Ahlul Bayt, Muawiyah would have them killed. Muawiyah killed many companions of the Prophet, such as Hujr ibn Adi, who's buried in Syria. He killed him out of only one reason, and that was he loved Amirul Mu'mineen. He oppressed Malik al-Ashtar. He oppressed Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. He oppressed Misam al-Tammar. So this was a time of turmoil and difficulty for the Muslims. This was the time that Imam al-Baqir was born. So from the very first day of his life, he automatically saw oppression, automatically saw sufferings, and automatically seen trials and tribulations. After returning back to Medina, he notices his father, Imam al-Sajjad, is always crying. He noticed that his father is always in pain. There's a narration from Imam al-Baqir where he states, I have never seen my father smile after the day of Ashura. Imam al-Sajjad lived for 40 years after the day of Ashura, yet he didn't smile once in 40 days. So he says, I watched my father. Now, the second period of the Imam's life begins under the guardianship of his father, Imam al-Sajjad. Now the Imam raised him in such a way that he would always advise him. He would always tell him what to do. He would always educate him, because the Imam knows that this is Baqir, the one that will spread knowledge. No Imam was given the open opportunity to preach the religion of Islam without any opposition other than beginning with Imam al-Baqir. For we know Amir al-Mu'mineen at the time of the Prophet was under the guardianship of the Prophet. Then after the Prophet passes away and leaves this world, 25 years he has to remain silent and watch 3 individuals take his Khilafat. Then finally, after 25 or 27 years, when he finally becomes the Khalifa, he only ruled for 2.5 years. In those 2.5 years, they had 3 civil wars against him. So it's very difficult for him to be able to preach the religion or to be able to spread the message of Rasulullah. Then after 2.5 years, they assassinated and killed him. Then his son Imam al-Hassan would succeed. All of a sudden Muawiyah then opposes the Imam. Then the Imam signs a peace treaty with Muawiyah and remains in his house. Then when Muawiyah gets poisoned by his wife and passes, when Imam al-Hassan gets poisoned by his wife, passes away from this world, Abu Abdullah then comes to be the Khalifa. Now he's also oppressed by Yazid al-La'in. He then rises up and goes to war and then gets sacrificed for this religion. Then Imam al-Sajjad coming back from Karbala, 40 years it was very difficult for him because Bani Umayyah were openly ruling. So throughout this period from Rasulullah all the way till Imam al-Sajjad, it was very difficult for the Ahlul Bayt to be able to preach the message openly and publicly. Yet when it came to this Imam al-Baqir, he was the first one that was given open permission to preach. One of the reasons why he was given open permission was because one of the Caliphs of Bani Umayyah by the name of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he was the Caliph of the time. He loved and respected Imam al-Baqir. He was one of those that stopped the cursing of Imam Ali from the pulpits that Bani Umayyah had started. He was the person that gave the land of Fadak back to Imam al-Baqir and said, this land belonged to your grandmother Zahra, therefore you can have it back. So he was probably the only Khalif within the family of Bani Umayyah that was actually respectable towards the Ahlul Bayt. And he allowed the Imam to openly preach and to openly spread the message. One of the first things that we see about this Imam is there is a companion by the name of Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, who is very close to the Ahlul Bayt. He lived until the age of 93. So he had a very long life. Jabir says that one day I was sitting in the company of Rasulullah where he would say to me, "Oh Jabir, Allah will give you such a long life that you will meet my 5th grandson Al-Baqir. And when you meet him, I want you to give him my salam." So they say that when Imam al-Baqir came back to Medina, still a lot of people did not know that he existed. A lot of people did not know that the Imam was even present on this world. They didn't know how many children Imam al-Sajjad had, because he would spend the majority of his time in his house in grief and sorrow. So one day they say that Jabir would be sitting in the marketplace of Medina and he would say, "Oh Al-Baqir, where are you? When will you grace me with your presence, O Al-Baqir?" And the people would say, I think Jabir has gone crazy due to his old age. He's just sitting in the middle of a marketplace saying, "Where is Baqir? Where is Baqir?" I think there might be something wrong with him. Jabir, as we know, was blinded at this time. After the events of Karbala, Jabir no longer could see. So he would sit calling out loud, where is Al-Baqir? Because his eyes were not able to see anymore. So the only way he would be able to convey the salam of Rasulullah to his fifth grandson would be by openly talking and asking the people, where is Baqir? So one day they say that Imam al-Sajjad and Imam al-Baqir alayhimus salam were walking into the marketplace, and Jabir says, all of a sudden I smelt a beautiful fragrance. Now we know that when somebody goes blind or deaf, or if somebody loses one of their five senses, the other senses get heightened. You're able to hear better if your eyes do not function. Even psychologically they say that if you close your eyes for several hours and your other senses then all of a sudden become enlightened. When you meditate, for example, they ask you to close your eyes so that you're able to hear the things that you would not normally hear, or feel the things that you would not normally feel, due to the fact that your eyes are looking. So Jabir says, I smelt a beautiful fragrance. All of a sudden I said to the personalities that were close, that is there a boy amongst this group by the name of Baqir? So the Imam al-Sajjad would approach him and say, oh Jabir, yes, my son Baqir is here. Why do you ask? He says, because Rasulullah said to me that when you meet al-Baqir, give him my salam. Therefore, I want to convey my salam. Could you bring this boy towards me? 5 or 6 years old this boy was. Jabir would pick him up, put him into his lap, kiss his hands, kiss his feet. And he would look at him and say, oh Muhammad, your grandfather Muhammad has asked me to convey my salams, or his salams, onto you. So imagine how great a personality Imam al-Baqir is, that Rasulullah would say, give him my salam. That's his early life. Then, in the guardianship of his father, he would also learn a lot from his father. And you'll notice that the Imam on several occasions would say to the people, when they would come and ask him a question, he would say, ask my son. Just like, for example, when Rasulullah would be sitting in the masjid of Medina, many companions would come up to Rasulullah and ask him a question. The Imam would turn towards Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, or he would turn towards Al-Hasan al-Hussein, and he would say, answer the question. The reason why they do that is not that the Prophet didn't have the answer, was because the Prophet was making sure that the people realize, in my absence, these are the people who you are supposed to turn to in order to get your questions answered, or in order to get your problems resolved. Just like that, Imam al-Sajjad would also say, oh Baqir, you answer these people. So during the lifetime of his father, he was educated by his father. He grew up in the guardianship of his father. He's seen the distress and sufferings of the Ahlul Bayt. And then finally, when Imam al-Sajjad, which I think his death anniversary is coming up tomorrow night, where he was poisoned then by the Bani Umayyah Khalifas. They would poison his food, the Imam would consume that food, and due to that poison, the Imam would pass away. Then Imam al-Baqir, at that time, they say that he would take his father's body into Jannatul Baqi, today, which is opposite the shrine of the Prophet. And he would bury his father, Imam al-Sajjad, next to his uncle Imam al-Hasan. Because in Jannatul Baqi, there's 4 graves. The first one is Imam Hassan's, the second one is Imam al-Sajjad's. The one next to it is Imam al-Baqir, and next to him is his son Imam al-Sajjad, so Imam Sadiq. So these 4 Imams are laying down in a grave next to each other, adjacent from each other. So he says that I would bury my father, come back, now my period of Imamat has begun. So the people would come and give the oath of allegiance to Imam al-Baqir. However, just like with Imam Zain al-Abidin, where the people got confused and thought that Muhammad ibn Hanafiya was the rightful successor to Imam al-Hussein, the people here also got confused. Why? Because Imam al-Baqir was of a young age. He had older brothers. Now at this point, I'd like to make a statement that age, or being older or younger, or being from a certain family members, it doesn't make a difference when it comes to khilafat and imamat. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. I am the one who will place amongst this earth a khalifa. So irrelevant of who's older or who's younger, irrelevant of how many children or brothers an imam has, the next imam is automatically designated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the imam, before leaving this world, would publicly announce to the people, after my leaving this world, or departing this world, this is the person who you are supposed to turn to. However, there was a group of people who, if you look up today, they still exist, by the name of the sect called Zaydis. They stream from mainline Shia 12ers. They come from Shia Islam. They believe in Imam Ali, they believe in Imam al-Hasan al-Hussein, but they don't believe in Imam Sajjad. They say that he wasn't an Imam, and in fact, Zayd, son of Imam Sajjad, is the fourth Imam. And then they also say that he is the last Imam as well. And there is no other Imams after him. Salawat. They would also say there is no other Imams after him. So the Zaydi sect are of the belief that there are only 4 Imams, and the 4th Imam, Zayd, didn't actually die but went into occultation. And he is the Mahdi. And on the Day of Judgment he will rise as the Mahdi. So this Zaydi sect was formed straight after the death of Imam Sajjad. Now Imam al-Baqir would also say that my brother Zayd has never said that he is the Imam. He has never claimed the position of Khilafat. In fact, Zayd loved Imam al-Baqir, his brother. And he spent his life in service to his brother Imam al-Baqir. In fact, he even waged a war against Bani Umayyah to avenge Karbala. Zayd, the son of Imam Sajjad, waged a war against Yazid's armies and against Bani Umayyah by saying that I am going to avenge my grandfather Imam al-Hussein. So he never claimed this. However, a group of people exist today. And just like that, there's also another group in Shia Islam who are known as the Ismailis. They only believe in 6 Imams. They believe that Imam Musa al-Qadhim is not the Imam. For according to them, after Imam al-Rida, or after Imam al-Sadiq, for example, his next son, Ismail, who was older than Imam Sadiq, was the next Imam. Again, this group has deviated from the mainstream Shia 12ers, because they believe that the older son should be the Imam. But we reply back by saying it doesn't matter whether the son is older or whether he's younger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designates. And just like that, there's another third group, may as well mention them, called the Waqifis. They exist and they only believe in 7 Imams. According to them, Imam al-Rida was the last Imam. Why? Because only an Imam can recite the funeral prayers of an Imam. And Imamat is given to him after he recites that funeral prayer. Yet they say that Imam Ali Rida died in Iran. Yet his son Imam Taqvi was in Medina. So how did he recite his father's funeral prayers? So the Waqifi come forward with an ideological belief that because Imam al-Taqi did not recite the funeral prayers of his father, therefore he is not the Imam. And the Imamat has stopped at number 7. Me personally, coming from Imam Taqi, I don't like that statement, because at the end of the day, that's my Imam. So it doesn't matter which Imam is aged at what age. All that matters is Allah decides himself who will become an Imam. And Rasulullah also gave us the names of these. This is something that we have documented within our books. If you notice that Rasulullah on his deathbed wrote a will. And in that will and statement, he mentioned the names of all 12. Within Shia literature and Ahl Sunnah literature, you'll notice that there is books where the Prophet says, after me there will be 12. All 12 will be from Quraysh. All 12 will descend from Ali and Fatima. All 12 will be just rulers on this earth. And the 12th one, his name shall be the same as my name. The 12th one will be the same as my name. And he will rule in this world near the end of time, when the world will be filled with injustice, and he will fill it with justice. And then after his reign, the Day of Judgment will come. That's something that is public. Yet there are documents within our books where the Prophet on a tablet wrote the names of every single Imam after him, so the 12 Imams, by name. And this tablet was passed from Imam to Imam to Imam until our 12th Imam will come and show this tablet to us. That will also be one of the proofs of Imam al-Zaman being Imam al-Zaman, to be able to show you that tablet where the Prophet named these Imams. However, so there's a dispute between the Zaydis and the Shia Ithna Asharis. However, we say, like we've said from the beginning, An Imam is designated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even a Prophet does not have a right to designate his successor. Nabi Musa wanted Nabi Harun to be his successor. Yet if you pick up the Quran in chapter 20, which is Surah Taha, you'll notice that Nabi Musa doesn't just say, "Oh Harun, you are my successor." He says, "Oh Allah, can you please make Harun my successor?" And chapter 20, verse 36, Allah replies back by saying, "We have accepted your request, O Musa. Harun is now your successor, your vizier, your khalifa." So a great prophet such as Moses does not have a right to elect his own successor. Only Allah can do that, which is one of the main arguments that we have for our Khilafat and Imamate. However, this dispute existed, this sect was created. However, Imam al-Baqir disputed with them. When the Imam became the Imam and openly began to rule, as I mentioned, now Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, who was the Bani Umayyah Khalif of the time, loved and respected the Imam. So he gave the Imam open ability to preach. He gave him the open ability to spread the message of his grandfather Rasulullah, and he didn't oppose him, didn't put any sort of limitations on him, to the extent that Imam al-Baqir began the university Hawza system that we have in our religion. In the mosque of the Prophet in Masjid al-Nabawi, Imam al-Baqir would sit there every day and he would give durus and lessons to thousands of people, answering their questions, being able to make sure that they stick to the correct path of Islam, not the path that Bani Umayyah was trying to tell them. Yet when Umar ibn Abdul Aziz dies, his son then succeeds him. His son hated Imam al-Baqir to such an extent that he was one of the people that poisoned Imam al-Baqir. But before he actually managed to poison the Imam, he wanted to humiliate the Imam. He wanted to oppress the Imam. And the way he would do that is he would call Jews and Christians and Muslim scholars to come and debate the Imam and try and refute the Imam or try and embarrass the Imam. Because at the end of the day, he's a young man. His name is Baqir. He's known as the man who splits knowledge. But what proof is there that he actually splitted knowledge? So there's a few stories here. One day he brings a Jewish person to Imam al-Baqir and says to him, "Listen, this man, he doesn't believe in Jesus, or he doesn't believe in your religion. He says that Islam is the correct religion. All other religions are false. Therefore, I want you to debate him." So this man says, "Fine." So he sits in front of him and says, "Oh Muhammad, I hear that you are very knowledgeable. Are you a scholar?" The Imam doesn't reply back by saying, "Yes, I'm a scholar." He just replies back by saying, "I am not from the ignorant." Like today when we ask people, "Are you an alim? Are you a knowledgeable scholar?" Yes, alhamdulillah, yes I am. The Imam doesn't reply back by showing off. Of course, this Baqir is the most knowledgeable person of his time. Nobody can surpass him in knowledge during his imamate. Yet when asked, "Are you a scholar?" he says, "I am not of the ignorant." He says, "I want to ask you a few questions." He says, "Fine, go ahead." So now this Christian says, "I'm not going to ask you from the Quran, I'm going to ask you from the Bible." That this would throw off Imam al-Baqir. The Imam smiles and says to him, "You can ask me from whichever 4 holy books of God, whichever one you want, go ahead." So he asks the question. Now when I pose these questions, I want you to think about the answers before I give them, just so you can understand how difficult these questions were. So he said to him, "Tell me, O Baqir, that what was the period of time difference between Jesus and Prophet Muhammad? What was the time, the years?" Now before the Imam answered, he looked at him and said, "You believe that it's 600 years, I believe that it's 500 years. What shook the person asking the question, the Christian priest, was the fact that how does he know what I think? I mean, anybody can just give me an answer and say it was 500 years. Imam al-Baqir says, "You believe it was 6. However, you were wrong because it's actually 500 years is the gap between Jesus and the final messenger." He says, "Okay, tell me about a fast, a roza, that you can keep and still eat and drink." That's a very difficult question. I don't know the answer to it. Think of a fast where you have to fast, but you can still eat and drink. Looking at obviously everybody around him, the Christians thinking, "Oh yes, I've got him now." The Imam looks at him and replies back straight away, without even a second of hesitation, or without pausing, or without delaying. The Imam replies straight away by saying, "Mary, the mother of Jesus, was ordered in the Quran to fast for a number of days, but in that fast, food was coming from heaven. She was still eating and drinking that food. Therefore, her fast was limited to her tongue. She wasn't allowed to speak for several days, and that was her fast. So this Christian priest looks at the Bani Umayyah Khalif and he says, I cannot surpass this man in knowledge. He is definitely Baqir. And then he leaves. Just like that, they also bring other people by saying, look, I want you to embarrass this person. So another individual comes by the order of the Khalif to the Imam and he would ask him a few questions. The first question would be, how is it that in Jannah, human beings will eat and drink, but they won't pass the food through their system? For example, in this world, we go to the toilet, put in simple words. Yet in heaven, there is no toilets. So how is it that a human being will eat and drink, consume the food, but not pass that food through its system? The Imam says, just like a baby or an embryo in its mother's womb, it eats what the mother eats, it drinks what the mother drinks, but it doesn't pass anything out of its system. So if Allah can do it in this world, then of course He can do it in the hereafter. He says, tell me about something that always increases and never decreases. The Imam says, your age will always increase, but it will never decrease. He says, tell me of something that the more you take from it, it doesn't reduce. That's a difficult one, because if you take any item, of a glass of water for example, if you take water from that glass, you've reduced the quantity of water from that glass. So he's thinking, this is the difficult question, this is where I've got him. So he says to him, tell me of an item or anything in this world that the more you take from it, it doesn't decrease. The Imam says a candle. You can light 1,000 candles from one candle, but that first candle will never lose its light. The person would say, I want to accept the religion that you follow. The Khalif would say to him, I brought you here to embarrass this person. What are you doing? He says, I have never seen anybody with knowledge like this man. Therefore, I want to accept the religion of Islam at this person's hands. And just like that, many people would come and say, for example, they would say to the Imam, has a shaitan ever spoken to any of the prophets? Imam al-Baqir would say, yes, he spoke to Nabi Noah. He had a conversation with him. What was that conversation? The Imam tells him, a very simple conversation. A shaitan one day comes to the Prophet and says, I want to thank you. So Noah says, why do you want to thank me? He says, because you prayed to Allah to destroy every oppressor in this world. And thanks to you, a flood came and wiped out humanity. And there aren't that many humans left. There's only a few people left in your ark. Therefore, my job of leading people astray, I'm on vacation at the moment, oh Noah. Thanks to you, I don't have to basically turn people away from the path, because there is no people left. Therefore, I want to thank you. And I want to give you a favor. So Nabi Nuh says, what favor do you want to give me, O shaitan? He says, I want to tell you of a time that whenever you are in 3 of these situations, remember that I am near. Now an enemy would use whatever it has to try and defeat you. Never will your enemy give you their weapons or tell you how they're going to attack you. Because at the end of the day, that defeats the purpose of the attack. Yet shaitan says to Nabi Nuh that because you have basically given me a paid leave holiday, I want to be able to give you some advice that in these 3 situations, I am the most powerful. Any human being, when in these 3 situations, I would be able to destroy him. So Nabi Nuh says, what is those 3 situations? He says the first is when a person is about to give charity. As you're about to give something into the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I will come and whisper in your ear, don't do this. And there's been many people who are about to give charity, yet I draw them back from giving charity. Even living in this country, for example, you'll notice, not as bad as Pakistan or India or the Middle East, but if you're walking through town centre, you'll notice that there are homeless people sitting there, or there are people who come up to you and ask you for some money. You'll notice that sometimes you'll give it, yet sometimes you'll think, you know what, I'm not going to give it to this person. He looks like a druggie. He's going to spend this money on cocaine, for example, or he's going to buy illegal substances, or he might buy alcohol with it. that thought that's coming into your mind, that's the shaitan. Because Amir al-Mu'mineen has two wonderful statements. The first, he says that when somebody raises their hands in front of you and begs you for something, he's already hit himself on his pride and lowered himself by reaching out and begging. Don't make it worse by rejecting. That's the first point. The second, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, do not worry about how this individual will spend the rizq or the charity that you give him. That's between him and God. You give him in the way of God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for giving that charity. And the third thing Amir al-Mu'mineen says, do not worry about the amount of charity that you give that is small, because nothing or giving nothing is worse than giving a small amount of charity. Sometimes you'll notice, yes, we don't always have a lot of money on us, or living in this country we have a bi-weekly or a monthly pay system. So there are times where we don't have money. But if you see somebody begging and asking you for money, do not let the shaitan waswasa fi sudurin nas. He whispers into the ears or the minds of the human beings. Do not let his whispers draw you away from giving that charity. You give the charity, let Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deal with that person and where he spends that money. A funny story, one of my friends was on Winslow Road in Manchester. A person came up to him and said, I need some money. He says, what for? He says, I need to buy a bus ticket. So my friend says, okay, let's get on the bus. So he accompanies this boy or this beggar who was asking for money onto the bus. When he gets onto the bus, he turns towards the bus driver and says, this person wants to go somewhere, I don't know where, I'm here to pay for his ticket. So he turns to him and says, well, where do you want to go? He goes, I don't want to go anywhere. He says, so why did you ask me money so I can give it to you for? So in a way, he exposed this person, but at the same time, he ended up giving him money anyway, because again, the waswasa of shaitan is something that makes you not give charity. But just the point that I was trying to make was he put him onto the spot. He said, you've asked for money for a bus ticket, I'm willing to buy your bus ticket. Where do you want to go? And he says, I don't want to sit on a bus. That's the first point. Shaitan says, this is where I am most powerful, so beware of me. Second is when you're angry. In the state of anger, shaitan says, it's very easy for me to make you go that one step further. The Prophet says, when you're angry, sit down. If you're sitting down, lay down. If you're angry, drink cold water. These things would suppress your anger, because shaitan whispers in your ear. When you get angry, shaitan says, do you know what? Let's take you one step further. Punch that person. And you'll notice in some situations, it starts off with just verbal abuse, and all of a sudden, everybody is swinging. Why? Because shaitan is making you take it that one step further. A beautiful statement of Amir al-Mu'mineen, a moment of patience. In a period, or a moment of patience, in a moment of anger, saves 1,000 moments of regret. So just hold on to your patience at that time. And shaitan says the third time, or the third situation where I can easily corrupt the human beings, is when a man and a woman who are non-mahram to each other are sitting alone in a room, for I am the third of the three. When you are alone with a non-mahram, it's easy for me to whisper into both of your ears and draw you away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, be careful in these three situations. You may think, oh, it's just a harmless thing, or she's my friend. We get that a lot. Well, he's my friend. Friendship is fair enough. In this country, we've gone to schools, colleges, university, workplace, where there are men and women, no doubt. But nobody is saying for you to sit alone in a room with the opposite gender. Because that's when shaitan says, I am able to overpower you. So these are the three situations. Another person comes to the Imam, and inshallah we'll conclude with this. Another person comes to the Imam once, and he asks him a question. He says to him, oh Imam. Now remember, these people that were asking the Imam questions, they weren't asking in order to gain knowledge. They weren't asking in order to better their knowledge on religion. The only reason that these people were asking these questions towards the Imams was so that they could try and embarrass the Imam. So one person comes and says to the Imam, who was the first person in this world to speak the language of Arabic? The Imam says Nabi Ismail was the first person to speak the language of Arabic, for he grew up and was born in the city of Makkah. Therefore in Makkah he began speaking the language of Arabic. So just like that, one by one, many people would come and ask the Imam complicated questions, ask the Imam questions that a normal person like you and I, we wouldn't be able to answer that question. Even if we were given time to go and research and then answer, we still wouldn't be able to give that answer. Yet the Imam all of a sudden answers within 1 second. Why? Because the knowledge that the Ahlul Bayt have is not a knowledge that is taught by man. It is a knowledge that has descended down from God Almighty to the Imams. Or they are born with this knowledge. How does a 3-year-old boy turn towards Yazid and say, Fir'aun did this to Musa and Harun? How does a 3-year-old boy even know who Musa, Harun and Fir'aun are? You have to grow up and get taught these things. Yet the Imams, they were taught with this automatically. They came to this world automatically, with the knowledge given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like our Prophet was never taught by any human being. Our brothers in Islam say that the Prophet was illiterate. We say he wasn't illiterate. All we say is that he wasn't taught by any man. He was taught by God, and he came to this world with divine knowledge from God directly, with no intermediaries. So just like that, the Imam was asked several questions on so many occasions. For example, another one just come to my mind. They said to the Imam, tell us about a time when it's neither day or night. And that's a difficult one. Because as soon as the day finishes, the night begins. As soon as the night finishes, the day begins. So he gets asked, tell us about a time when it's neither night nor day. Imam al-Baqir says to him, you know that morning, just before the sun rises, that 15 to 16 minutes of purple sky that we call the first light, that period is neither day nor night. They say, tell us about an example that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran when He speaks about an ant. Allah speaks about the ant in the Quran, and He says that when you crush this ant, it is the same as a glass being broken. Ants do not have glass in them, so please elaborate. The Imam elaborates and answers, yet you'll notice that today, 1400 years after the Quran had been revealed, scientists in the last couple of years have started to realize that there is a system or some sort of material within an ant, that if you were to take that material, boil it to 100 degrees and then freeze it, it would turn into glass. In an ant, it would turn into glass. Yet 1400 years ago, this boy or this man, Al-Baqir, is telling the people the answer to this question. They're asking him complicated questions. Tell us about this and that, the halal, in a way to try and embarrass him in front of the people. Yet every single person that came in front of the Imam would end with either saying, MashaAllah, your knowledge is unbelievable, or I want to follow your religion. So when this person of Bani Umayyah was not able to embarrass the Imam via education, or was not able to embarrass the Imam via, humiliating him, he only had one other choice, and that was to poison the Imam. But just before we mention the poison of the Imam, just to come on to another quick point, inshallah we'll still finish at the same time, is with Imam al-Taqi alayhi salam, for example. There came a time in his life where the king of Bani Abbas, who was the ruler, basically gave him a diamond to one of his followers. And he said, here's a diamond, I want you to protect this. This is a very expensive diamond, and if anything happens to this, I will kill you. However, I want you to keep this diamond with you because it's for my daughter. So in the next couple of days, I'm going to call you, and then you can give it back to me. He says, I went home and accidentally slipped. As I slipped, I dropped the diamond. As the diamond hit the floor, it broke into 2 pieces. The first thing that came to my mind was that if anything happens to this diamond, he's going to kill me. This really rare and expensive diamond, and now I've split it into 2 pieces. What am I going to do? So he goes to Imam Taqi and says to him, oh Imam, this is the situation. The Bani Abbas Khalifa is going to call me in a couple of days. What am I going to do? The Imam says, don't worry, I've sorted it. He says, what do you mean? The Imam says, don't worry about it. It's sorted. You just go home. He had so much certainty in the Imam that he said, okay, fine. So he went home. A couple of days later, the king calls him and says, look, have you still got that diamond? He says, yeah, I've got the diamond. He goes, there's a bit of a problem. He says, what? in his mind now he's thinking, maybe the king knows I've broken the diamond, and now he's come here to punish me. But again he asks, what's the problem? He says, I have 2 daughters. The diamond was for one of them. When the younger daughter found out that I had bought a diamond for the older daughter, she got jealous. And she said, Dad, I want the same diamond. Not a different one, the exact same one. The king says, it's such a rare diamond that I don't think another diamond like this exists. Therefore, I'm asking you, can you do me a favor? Can you break it into 2 so that I can give it to both of my daughters? At that moment, that person thinks to himself, oh Imam, thank you. He says, I've already done it. And he opens up the cloth and gives him the 2 pieces of diamond. This is the Imam. These are the personalities that were sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These were the knowledge that they were given of the past, present and future with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And with these stories we can go on and on, but inshallah, coming near the end, to speak about Imam al-Baqir, when this Bani Abbas or this Bani Umayyah Khalifa was unable to kill or embarrass the Imam openly and publicly, he decided to kill him the same way majority of Bani Umayyah and majority of Bani Abbas killed the Imams, was either by the sword or by the poison. Amir al-Mu'mineen was the one that was killed by a sword that was dipped in poison. However, when it came to his children, it was either the sword or it was poison. So you'll notice that as Imam al-Baqir is spreading the message of his father and grandfather and spreading the message throughout the people and educating thousands of people, the Khalifa who hated the Imam now is thinking to himself, I need to overthrow this person. I need to get rid of this man called Baqir. But the only way that I can do that is if I kill him. So what he does is he puts poison and mixes it with the food and presents it towards the Imam. As the Imam consumes this food, all of a sudden the poison begins to move through the bloodstream of Imam al-Baqir. And he remembers Imam al-Hassan, he remembers his father Imam Sajjad, for these Imams were also poisoned and were killed due to poison. So as the poison is going through his body, he's crying. And his son, Imam Sadiq, is saying, oh father, are you crying because of the pain of the poison? Imam al-Baqir would say, no, I am not crying because of the pain of the poison. He says, I am crying because as I am dying, I am in my house. I am with my children. I am surrounded by my loved ones. I am sitting comfortably on my bed. I am about to leave this world in a beautiful manner. Yet when I think about Karbala, even though I was 3 to 4 years old, even though that I was a young child, at Karbala I noticed many tragedies. They say that when Imam al-Hussein would enter into the tent of his son Sajjad, Imam al-Sajjad would open his eyes and see the Imam's face covered in the blood of Ali al-Akbar and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and Ali al-Askar. So he would say to him, oh father, Aina Habib? Where is Habib? The Imam would say, Habib has been killed. He would say, father, where is Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas? He says, he's also been killed. Imam al-Baqir says, I was in the tent sitting next to my father, watching him converse with his father. At that moment, Imam Sajjad gets up, trying to aid on a stick and a sword because he was ill and could hardly move. He was trying to get out of his tent to partake in the war. The Imam would say, Ya Zainab, protect my son Sajjad, for after me he is to continue the lineage of Muhammad. He says, I noticed this. Sham-e Ghariba, Imam al-Baqir says, I saw the women running from tent to tent as Shimr was slapping my 4-year-old auntie. I would notice that Sayyidah Zainab would run from one tent to another. Imam al-Baqir says there's a very famous story that once in the middle of the night, as Sham-e Ghariba was happening, all of a sudden Sayyidah Zainab would hear that Umar ibn Sa'ad would say that sharpen the hooves of these horses, for we are going to trample on the body of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. At that moment Sayyidah Zainab says, I heard a voice that sounded like glass being broken. So I came to Sayyid al-Sajjad and I said, oh nephew, what was that noise? Imam Sajjad says, oh aunt, are you sure that you will be able to handle this? She says, yes I will, just tell me what it was. He says, that noise of glass being broken, that was the ribs and the chest of my father under the horses of Bani Umayyah. This was the noise that you heard, oh auntie. Sayyidah Zainab would run outside of the tent, stand on Tilla Zainabiyya, turn towards the city of Medina, and she would say, Ya Jadda, oh my grandfather, oh Rasulullah, Hadha Husainuka fil ara. This is your Hussein open. on the lands of Karbala. Imam Baqir says, I witnessed Sham, I witnessed the imprisonment, I witnessed the death of my family members. Then he says, I witnessed Arba'een when we came back to Karbala. And you would see that the mother of Aliun al-Akbar would fall upon the grave of Aliun al-Akbar and cry. The mother of Qasim, Layla Farwa, would fall upon the grave of Qasim and she would cry. The mother of Aliun al-Askar would do the same. Sayyidah Zainab would cry as well. Imam al-Baqir would recollect this and say that the only reason I am crying, O Son Sadiq, is because I am crying in a peaceful or dying in a peaceful way. Yet the Ahlul Bayt in front of my eyes, they were killed worse than they kill animals. For Imam al-Zaman says in Ziyarat al-Nahiya that the way they slaughtered my grandfather, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, was worse than the way in which they slaughter an animal. For Imam Sajjad says, I was working in the marketplace and I noticed a butcher. So I said to him, oh butcher, when you sacrificed this lamb, did you give it any water? First question. He says, of course I gave it water, because it is the sunnah of your grandfather, Rasulullah, that whenever you had to kill an animal, you have to make sure that it is not thirsty. He would then cry and Imam Sajjad would say, oh my father, Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, the animals are being given water, yet qutil al-atshan, you were killed whilst you were still thirsty. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيُّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ.